February 20th, 1258. A carpet was spread out in a field outside Baghdad, not to welcome anyone, but to be used as a shroud. A shroud for whom? For the commander of the faithful, the Caliph of the Muslims, al-Mustasim Billah, the man whose name was read aloud in Friday prayers from China to Africa, the man who called himself the shadow of God on earth. But today he stood helpless before the Mongol commander Halaku Khan. Halaku's order was chilling: kill the Caliph in such a way that not a single drop of his blood falls on the ground. What happened next was a scene so horrifying that even the earth seemed to tremble. The Mongols wrapped the Caliph inside the carpet and rode their horses over him. The man who considered himself the greatest ruler of the Islamic world was crushed like an ant. This was not merely the death of a caliph. It became the final chapter of the 500-year-old Abbasid Empire, the Baghdad that had illuminated the world with science, philosophy, and knowledge. The city whose walls were mighty, whose libraries held the greatest treasures of civilization, was destroyed in just 13 days. But how? Today we tell the story of one of the most tragic events in Islamic history, the fall of Baghdad. This is the story of the destruction of a great city and the end of a civilization. 13th century Baghdad was not merely a city. Think of it as the center of the world. It was the New York, the London, and the Silicon Valley of its age, all combined into one. Here stood Beit al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom, the world's greatest library and research center. Not only Arab knowledge, but Greek philosophy, Indian mathematics, and Chinese science. Everything was collected here. Al-Khwarizmi developed algebra here. Physicians like Al-Razi performed groundbreaking surgeries here. Scientists such as Ibn al-Haytham uncovered the secrets of the universe here. It was said about Baghdad, there are two kinds of people in the world, those who have seen Baghdad and those who have seen nothing. Baghdad was a city of both history and legend. It was the city of Harun-ur-Rashid. It was also the city of 1001 nights. It was a living dream. Long before the American dream, there was the Baghdad dream. But history follows one unchanging rule: every rise is followed by a fall. By the middle of the 13th century, Baghdad had become only a shadow of its former glory. Yet even during the reign of the 37th and last Abbasid Caliph, al-Mustasim Billah, Baghdad still possessed immense wealth. Even in its period of greatest decline, it remained the largest city in the world. Its population is estimated to have been between 1.5 and 2 million people. Its ruler, al-Mustasim Billah, was perhaps the richest man in the world of his time. His treasuries overflowed with gold, silver, diamonds, jewels, and countless other riches. But kingdoms are not governed by treasure, nor by grandeur, nor by spiritual titles. A ruler needs something far more important: authority and power. And these were precisely the things the Abbasid Caliph lacked. The decline of Baghdad had begun centuries before him. It was simply al-Mustasim's misfortune that history assigned him the burden of witnessing its final collapse. He was deeply fond of poetry and music. He spent enormous sums patronizing singers and entertainers. Lost in luxury, surrounded by flattering courtiers, he lived inside a bubble of illusion. He no longer saw himself merely as a king. He believed himself to be the shadow of God on earth, And when a ruler begins to believe that his authority is divinely guaranteed, he also begins to believe that no one can ever overthrow him. Across almost the entire Muslim world, he was still recognized as the Caliph. No Muslim ruler, no matter how powerful, was considered fully legitimate without recognition from Baghdad. Even thousands of kilometers away, the Caliph's name appeared on the coins of the Delhi Sultanate. In Friday prayers, his name was pronounced before that of the Sultan of Delhi. Because of this, the Caliph convinced himself that if anyone dared cast an evil eye toward Baghdad, the entire Islamic world would rise in its defense. He believed he scarcely needed an army. The angels themselves, he thought, would protect him. There were reasons behind this dangerous illusion. Just a few decades earlier, in 1217, Alauddin Muhammad, the second of the Khwarezmian Empire, had planned to march against Baghdad. But before he could even reach the city, more than half of his army perished in a devastating snowstorm in the mountains of Iran. People declared, "This is the Caliph's spiritual power. His divine blessing destroyed such a mighty army." But the reality was very different. These were nothing more than the words of flattering courtiers. If the Caliphate truly possessed such supernatural power, Palestine would not have fallen in 1099. Jerusalem would never have been captured by the Crusaders. Central Asia and Iran would not have been devastated by Genghis Khan only a few decades earlier. Perhaps al-Musta'sim also underestimated the Mongols for another reason. It was the Abbasid Caliph al-Nasir who had reportedly conveyed to Genghis Khan that if he attacked the Khwarezm Shah, the Caliph would raise no objection. The terrible fate that later befell Samarkand, Bukhara, Herat, Nishapur, and eventually Tabriz came with the Caliph's approval. Perhaps that is why al-Musta'sim believed, "Why would the Mongols ever turn against us?" But geopolitics follows a simple law. A great power eventually swallows a weaker one. The real political authority of the Abbasid Caliphate had disappeared centuries earlier. Its effective rule now extended only over Baghdad and a handful of nearby cities. In other words, the Caliph ruled little more than his own neighborhood, while imagining himself ruler of the world. Yet al-Musta'sim had also become dangerously negligent about Baghdad's defenses. Meanwhile, a storm was rising in the east, a storm that could neither be bought with gold, nor stopped with poetry, nor delayed by music. It understood only one language, the language of the sword. While the Caliph remained lost inside his own world, thousands of miles away, in the Mongol capital of Karakorum, a decision was being made that would change history forever. The great Khan, Mangi Khan, summoned his brother Halaku Khan and gave him a single command: march to the west and erase whatever stands in your path. It was the continuation of Genghis Khan's unfinished mission. The first target became the organization feared throughout the known world, the Order of the Assassins. Hidden inside the mountains of Iran, their very name terrified kings. For decades they had assassinated one powerful figure after another. Among their victims were the Seljuk Grand Vizier Nizam al-Mulk Tusi, rulers including Shihabuddin, Ghori, and even Abbasid caliphs such as al-Mustarshid. They also attempted to assassinate Saladin Ayyubi, Sanya Seljuki, and even Manji Khan himself. Everyone feared them. No one had been able to eliminate them until Halaku Khan arrived. He destroyed the assassins so completely that it was as though they had never existed. One by one, their mountain fortresses were demolished. The message to the world was unmistakable. A new Genghis Khan had entered the battlefield. Ironically, the Abbasid Caliph celebrated this victory. An enemy whom no one else had defeated had now been wiped out. Some accounts even state that al-Mustasim himself had written to Manji Khan, requesting that the Ismaili assassins be eliminated. The Caliph now felt completely secure. The Mongols had already destroyed his two greatest enemies, first the Khwarazm Shah, then the assassins. What he did not realize was that Hulagu Khan's gaze had now turned toward Baghdad itself. Then came the moment the Caliph had never imagined. A letter arrived from Hulagu Khan, but this was no ordinary letter. It was an ultimatum. Hulagu declared, "I am the scourge of God. I have filled the earth with corpses. I have destroyed the Hashashin. Your walls cannot stop me. Your army cannot face me. Tear down your walls, surrender your treasury, and present yourself before me. Otherwise your fate will be the same as theirs." When this message reached Baghdad, what did the Caliph do? Did he mobilize his army? Did he seek help from the Muslim kingdoms? Absolutely not. Instead, he laughed. Will these nomadic savages frighten us? They know nothing of the Caliphate. The Muslims of the whole world are my subjects. If I give a single signal, millions will come to defend me. This was the greatest illusion of al-Mustasim's life. He failed to understand one fundamental truth. Respect in politics belongs not to spiritual authority, but to power. The rulers who mentioned the Caliph's name in Friday prayers and engraved it upon their coins were benefiting from his symbolic legitimacy. If Baghdad were attacked, none of them would come to save it. Yet blinded by this misunderstanding, the Caliph replied to Hulagu's ultimatum with astonishing arrogance. He wrote, "Who are you to threaten me? Do you not know that from east to west all kings are my servants? If I desire, I can send such a mighty army against you that it will conquer your empire. Turn back from the borders of Khorasan, and we may forgive you." But this letter was not his greatest mistake. His greatest mistake was trusting the man standing beside him, a man who appeared to be his most loyal servant while secretly serving Hulagu Khan. His name was Ibn al-Alqami. Hulagu Khan was certainly approaching Baghdad, but the city's greatest danger did not ride with the Mongol cavalry. It stood inside the Caliph's own palace. At his right hand, his prime minister, Ibn al-Alqami, a brilliant man, but a dangerous one. The Caliph trusted him completely, believing him to be his most faithful adviser. Yet behind that loyalty burned deep resentment. According to many historical accounts, Ibn al-Alqami was a Shia official serving within a predominantly Sunni court. At a time when sectarian conflict between Sunni and Shia communities had intensified across Baghdad, he reportedly became increasingly alienated from the Abbasid regime. Whether driven by political ambition, personal grievance, or both, he eventually chose betrayal. He resolved that the Abbasid Caliphate must fall, even if it meant cooperating with its greatest enemy. His plan began quietly. To the Caliph he said, "Commander of the faithful, the treasury is shrinking. We must reduce expenses. There is no danger of war." It was Ibn al-Alqami who persuaded the Caliph that Baghdad's army was unnecessarily large. He advised that it be reduced. He assured him, "You are the successor of the Prophet, Allah himself is your protector. Why do you need such a large army? Every great conqueror, from Mahmud Ghaznavi to Tughril Beg Seljuki, has bowed before the Caliphate. Halaku Khan will do the same. The Caliph believed him. The consequences were catastrophic. Soldiers' salaries were stopped. Thousands were dismissed. Many left for Syria and Egypt in search of employment. The army that had once numbered nearly 100,000 was eventually reduced to barely 20,000. Baghdad was being disarmed by its own prime minister. According to many historians, Aishan-i-Alkamai was also secretly corresponding with Walaku Khan. His letters reportedly assured the Mongols, "Come to Baghdad, the road is clear, the army is weak. The Caliph is careless. I will open the city gates for you. In return, make me minister in the new government." For a single position, he gambled with the lives of hundreds of thousands. He revealed military weaknesses, secret routes, and vulnerabilities that only a chief minister could have known. Meanwhile, inside the palace, he continued feeding the Caliph comforting lies. When spies warned that the Mongols were approaching, Ibn al-Alkamai dismissed every report. "Do not worry, Your Majesty. These are only rumors. And even if they arrive, the women of Baghdad alone will drive them away with stones." Thus, the Caliph remained intoxicated by a false sense of security, until the morning of January 18th, 1258 arrived. Only then did al-Musta'sim Billah finally awaken to reality, not because someone warned him, but because Mongol arrows had reached the windows of his own palace. Startled, he looked outside and saw the Mongol army spread around Baghdad like an endless sea. Halaku Khan had arrived. The trap had been laid. The prey was already inside it. Baghdad, once considered the safest city in the world, had become a prison. Ibn al-Alkamai's mission was complete. Now came the catastrophe that would consume Baghdad for the next 13 days. January 1258. The siege of Baghdad had begun. Halaku Khan's army surrounded the city from every direction. No one could leave, not even a bird could escape. The Mongols cut down the forests surrounding Baghdad, using the timber to build enormous siege engines. Then they began raining stones and fire upon the city. Inside the Caliph's palaces, where melodies had once echoed through magnificent halls, there remained only one sound, the thunder of collapsing walls and burning towers. The Caliph, who until yesterday had been intoxicated by his own authority, now hid inside the palace basement like a frightened child. Desperate, he turned to Ibn-i-Alkamai. "What do we do now?" The minister delivered his final blow. "Now, nothing can be done." On February 10th, 1258, the gates of Baghdad were opened. Caliph al-Musta'sim emerged, accompanied by his ministers, judges, scholars, and princes. Even then, he believed he was going to negotiate. He still imagined that his spiritual authority alone would compel Halaku Khan to show mercy. He believed everything would return to normal. Instead, he was leading his family, his caliphate, and his empire toward the gallows. As soon as al-Musta'sim entered the Mongol camp, Halaku Khan greeted him with a smile. He invited the caliph into his tent. Then he raised his hand. That single signal was enough. One by one, Mongol executioners began killing everyone who had accompanied the caliph, his ministers, his judges, his generals. One after another, they were beheaded before the caliph's own eyes. Al-Musta'sim screamed. He begged. He wept. Halaku Khan simply watched. The Caliph himself was kept alive, but only for one reason, to reveal the hidden treasures of Baghdad. Then Halaku gave another order. The Mongol army entered the city, and the apocalypse began. They swept through Baghdad like hungry wolves descending upon a flock of sheep. Children, the elderly, women, the sick, no one was spared. According to many historical accounts, at least 800,000 people were killed during the massacre. The piles of bodies became so enormous that people could scarcely walk through the streets. Blood flowed into the Tigris River until even its waters appeared red. Yet even more terrifying than the bodies was the silence. When the first Friday arrived after Baghdad's fall, on February 13th, 1258, the city's minarets stood silent. For nearly 5 centuries, the call of Allahu Akbar had echoed every Friday from thousands of mosques across Baghdad. But not on that day. There was no adhan, no khutbah, no congregational prayer. Why? Because the mosques contained no worshippers, only corpses. The muezzins had been killed. The imams had been murdered. It became one of the darkest Fridays in Islamic history. Perhaps even the heavens wept. While Baghdad burned, Halaku Khan summoned the Caliph once more. "What do you have for me?" With trembling hands, Al-Mustasim surrendered 10,000 gold coins, along with countless jewels. Halaku glanced at them and threw them aside. "Tell me where the real treasure is." He ordered the palace floors to be broken open. Beneath them, hidden chambers appeared, filled with gold, diamonds, jewels, and unimaginable wealth. Even Halaku himself was astonished. Then he delivered a lesson that rulers have remembered ever since. He placed a plate overflowing with gold before the Caliph and commanded, "Eat it." The Caliph looked up in confusion. "How can anyone eat gold?" Halaku roared, "Then why did you hoard it? Why did you not forge swords for your soldiers? Why did you not spend this wealth defending your kingdom?" The Caliph lowered his head. Quietly he replied, "This was written in destiny. It was Allah's will." Halaku laughed. "Then whatever happens to you now, that too is divine decree." The Mongols had decided the Caliph must die. But Mongol tradition held that royal blood should never be spilled upon the earth. So Halaku declared, "Do not worry. His blood will never touch the ground." On February 20th, 1258, Al-Mustasim Billah was taken to a field outside Baghdad. He was wrapped inside a thick carpet, like a piece of baggage. Then Mongol horsemen were ordered to ride over him. The commander of the faithful, the Caliph of the Muslims, a descendant of Quraysh. His cries echoed beneath the hooves. Bone after bone was crushed, until his body was reduced to lifeless flesh inside the carpet. With his death, the 500-year Abbasid Caliphate came to an end, and with it, the era of Arab political supremacy within the Islamic world also came to a close. But Baghdad's suffering was still not over. The Mongols had destroyed human lives. Now they turned toward something even greater, knowledge itself. The waters of the Tigris, which had turned red with blood, were about to turn black. The Caliph was dead, but the Mongols' fury had not yet cooled. Their next target was not people, it was books. Halaku Khan's soldiers marched toward Beit al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom, the greatest library in the world. Within its walls were priceless translations of Aristotle, Plato, and countless classical scholars, found nowhere else on earth. Here were preserved the medical works of Ibn Sina, the mathematics of al-Khwarizmi, the scientific discoveries of Ibn al-Haytham. This was the intellectual treasure that Muslim civilization had spent more than 5 centuries collecting. During the reigns of Harun al-Rashid and al-Man, books had been purchased with their weight in gold. But the Mongols saw only paper, nothing more. They set fire to the house of wisdom. Yet the collection was so vast that even the flames seemed insufficient. So they carried the remaining books to the banks of the Tigris and threw them into the river. History records that millions of manuscripts were cast into its waters. Then the world witnessed a scene almost beyond imagination. Yesterday the Tigris had run red with human blood. Today its waters turned black with the ink of books. Knowledge that once revealed the mysteries of the universe was trampled beneath the hooves of Mongol horses. This was not merely the destruction of books. It was the death of a civilization. That day the Muslim Golden Age came to an end. The scientific leadership that the Islamic world had held for centuries flowed away with the waters of the Tigris. Had those books survived, perhaps history itself would have unfolded differently. Perhaps the Industrial Revolution might have begun not in Europe, but in Baghdad. But history chose another path. The lamp of knowledge that had burned for 500 years was extinguished by the breath of Hulagu Khan. Baghdad was no longer a city. It had become a graveyard of both humanity and knowledge. And with that destruction, an intellectual decline descended upon the Islamic world from which, some argue, it has never fully recovered. The destruction of Baghdad sent shockwave throughout the Islamic world. When the great Persian poet Sadi Shirazi received the news, he composed a famous elegy whose words still shake the heart today. He wrote that the heavens should rain blood upon the earth for the fall of the commander of the faithful. And he cried out, if the prophet were to raise his head on the day of judgment, he should raise it now and witness this doomsday among his people. To many it seemed that Islam itself had come to an end. For the first time in centuries, the Muslim world stood without a caliph. Whatever the Abbasid Caliphate had become, whether ruled by kings, tyrants, or usurpers, it had still remained a symbol of unity for the Ummah. Today, living in the 21st century, it is difficult to appreciate what that symbol meant. But for people of that era, the existence of a caliph was considered an essential part of the political and religious order. Now there was no caliph. The Ummah felt orphaned. From this devastation emerged a powerful wave of asceticism. From the ruins of Central Asia and the ashes of Baghdad, people increasingly turned toward spirituality. Across the Islamic world, from India to Morocco, the influence of Sufi orders expanded. Figures such as Maulana Rumi, Shams Tabrizi, and many other spiritual masters helped heal broken hearts. The Muslim world began viewing life differently. Empires, palaces, and worldly power were now seen as temporary. The Abbasid Empire had fallen, but had the institution of the Caliphate ended forever? No. After Baghdad's destruction, a new hope emerged, this time from Cairo. In 1260, the Mamluks defeated the Mongols at the Battle of Ain Jalut, saving Egypt and Cairo from Mongol conquest. The Mamluk Sultan, Rukan al-Din Baybars, began searching for a surviving member of the Abbasid family. His goal was to restore the caliphate. Eventually, news reached him. During the fall of Baghdad, an Abbasid prince, Abu al-Qasim Ahmad, had been imprisoned. Taking advantage of the chaos, he escaped. For nearly 3.5 years, he wandered through deserts, villages, and distant settlements, living in complete anonymity. Baybars finally found him. After confirming his Abbasid lineage, he invited him to Cairo with full honor and respect. In 1261, a historic ceremony took place. Abu al-Qasim Ahmad was proclaimed Caliph, taking the title Al-Mustansir Billah. Once again, the Friday sermon was delivered in the name of an Abbasid Caliph. Once again, coins were struck bearing his name. The Abbasid Empire had vanished, but the Abbasid Caliphate had been revived. And now, Cairo became the new center of the Islamic world. Is the fall of Baghdad merely another story from history? A tragedy confined to the pages of old books? Or does it still carry a warning for our own age? After 1258, Baghdad never regained the prestige or influence it had once enjoyed. It never again became the center of politics or knowledge. Centuries later, following the First World War, Britain and France created the modern state of Iraq and placed the descendants of the Sharif of Mecca upon the throne in Baghdad. Yet from that time to the present day, the city has rarely known lasting peace. The Ba'ath Party coup, the rule of Saddam Hussein, the Iran-Iraq War, the First Gulf War, the Second Gulf War. Even after more than 7 centuries, Baghdad continues to bear the scars of conflict. And if we look carefully, perhaps we can still recognize familiar patterns. Leaders isolated within their palaces, while danger gathers at the borders. Officials willing to bargain with enemies to preserve their own positions. And ordinary people watching events unfold until it is too late. Halaku Khan is not merely the name of one man. He represents a recurring force in history. The lesson is this: when a nation becomes mentally and physically weak, another power eventually rises to replace it. In 1258, that force arrived on horseback. Today, it may arrive with tanks, aircraft, or drones. The instruments change. The outcome often does not. The fall of Baghdad leaves behind one enduring lesson. Nations are not preserved by mountains of gold. The Caliph possessed immense wealth, yet none of it saved his empire. Nations are not preserved by prayers alone if they are not accompanied by planning, preparation, and strategy. And nations begin to perish when they lose both knowledge and character. When the pursuit of comfort replaces sacrifice, humiliation soon follows.